Hello everyone, we're having a look at the Roman Empire, and today we're going to study gender, literacy and culture. Have a look at the social side of history for the Roman Empire. Nuclear family. Adult sons did not live with their families, and adult brothers rarely shared a household. So, a nuclear family was the norm here, not a joint family. We know a nuclear family would mostly, or a nuclear family comprises of two partners and their children, no extended grandparents or extra aunts or uncles or cousins. So, nuclear family was the norm. Slaves were included in the family or household. Slavery was a very important and prominent institution in the Roman Empire. We see that the rich nobles had a lot of slaves, whereas people from the ordinary family had probably just one or two slaves. Because remember, a slave totally depended on his or her master for food, clothes, for everything. So keeping slaves was actually an expense. So you could not. The amount of slaves you kept, it actually meant how much you could afford, the expenses you could incur for them. So anyway, slaves were also included in the family or household. Marriage. The wife did not transfer to her husband's authority, but retained full rights in the property of her native family. Now, this means that upon marriage, a woman did not have to suddenly change her name to that of her husband's, did not suddenly just go from belonging the authority of her father to then under the authority of the husband. It was nothing like that. A woman was seen as an own individual in her own right, who had property rights in her native family. Remember, for a very long time, our Indian society has been literally plagued with the idea of primogeniture, where the daughters were not seen as legal heirs. However, when we have a rule at the legal textbook of the Roman Empire, we see that it was not the case here. Of course, it's not the case in India anymore either. The various amendments, in fact, the various laws written down in the constitution have made women or daughters equal heirs as sons, but it's taken us a while to reach here. Anyway, so at that time, the Roman Empire saw to it that women were treated as individuals in their own right. They did not suddenly just transfer under the authority of their husband. They retained their full property rights. A woman would remain a primary heir to her father and became an independent property owner on his death. The wife enjoyed complete legal independence. So a wife did not always have to be accompanied by her husband everywhere. She could also legally file cases in her own name, under her own name. Divorce was easy, and no more than a notice of intent by either party was required. So far I've told you how theoretically things seem to be very good in the Roman Empire, very progressive rather as far as gender is concerned. However, we'll now have a look at the practical aspect of how things may have not been as progressive as they sound. Males married by late 20s or early 30s, females married by late teens or early 20s. So you see that there is an age difference here. The age gap, the age difference would be men would marry from between the age of 21 till 35. But women, however, would marry from the age of about 15, 16 till the age of 19, 20. That's a difference in age, right? So, like we see, however, the age gap meant inequality, because at the end of the day, you're still a child at the age of 16 compared to what you've achieved in life, how much you've earned at the age of 26 or 25. Invariably, it just happens. If someone is older than you, they do end up dominating you. And I'm not talking about a year older or a few years older. There's a massive age gap between a male and a female here. Marriages were arranged and women subject to domination. So in the end, we see although theoretically it looks very progressive, practically it may have not been so. Women were still subjected to domination. Also because we don't see so much of financial independence for women. And it's very important to be financially independent to have control over your own lives. And women in Roman Empire were not enjoying that as such. So in the end, they were dominated by their husbands. Father had substantial legal control over their children's life and death. where you would be surprised to know that fathers could decide whether their children would live or die. We've had instances where if a child was differently abled, probably of a gender they did not want, they could actually keep the child out in the cold, and sometimes the child would die, and the father had the right to do this, which is very appalling, of course, but the father had such rights over the life of his children. Literacy. In Pompeii, there is a strong evidence of casual literacy. In Egypt, formal documents were by scribes. So literacy, throughout the empire, we see that yes, people were literate on an average scale. Yes, there was literacy. Especially very strong evidence of casual literacy. Casual literacy here would mean, in general, people may not have been very highly educated as such, but they were literate. They could read and write. In Egypt, however, we have evidences that formal documents, these special documents, were written by scribes. We have come across a word called scribes, who were basically writers, also in Mesopotamia. Because remember that writing at that time was an art. Well, writing in the Roman Empire wasn't really an art anymore, but still, formal documents, people were not as highly educated to really be writing down formal documents. So there were specific scribes for that. Cultural diversity. There were various religious cults and local deities. Various languages were also spoken, such as Aramaic, Coptic, Punic, and Berber, indicating linguistic diversity. Have a look at this map. The portion here you see, have a look at this map, and the portion here you see in brown is, or will, or did rather, constitute the Roman Empire. We see how it's north and south and even east of the Mediterranean. You cannot expect such a massive empire to have a uniform culture, to be following a uniform religion, or for that matter to be having a single language. And that was there. And that was it. There was a lot of cultural diversity, a lot of linguistic diversity. People had their own local cults, their own deities, and it was all allowed. The only thing that was uniform in all of these territories was that they were under the administration of Rome. They all formed the Roman Empire, and all the provinces bore allegiance to one ruler or the principate. So the administration was the same everywhere, but there was a lot of cultural and linguistic diversity, which also means it was a very tolerant empire. Remember, the way the Roman Empire spread, it had to be tolerant, because otherwise people will start revolting if you want to change them. At one point people can even agree to be ruled by you, but if you want to change the life of people, their culture, their ways, then people are not going to listen to your authority. Alright, so that's what we did today. We studied gender, literacy and culture, and that's about cultural diversity. Pompeii, you may have heard about Pompeii because it was the city that got destroyed by Mount Vesuvius, the volcano. However, we have found evidence of whatever's left about a lot of literacy. Libraries have been found in Pompeii. So that's what makes Pompeii very interesting. There were various styles of dress and costumes, different kinds of food, different social organizations, tribal as well as non-tribal. So like I showed you on the map how massive the Roman Empire was, and naturally there would be a lot of differences within the empire. But these differences did not really come to the fore to make any province want to as such break away from the empire. Thank you.